Welcome to another episode of Chad Sports Talk. You don't know, my name's Chad. Take a dive with sports. And I'm going to touch upon the recent Baseball Hall of Fame selection or possibly non-selection, depends on your point of view. And before I dive into all of that mess, if you could go ahead and smash that thumbs up for me, especially like all my videos and the content I provide you. Please, the YouTube gods, help promote this channel. I view my analytics. I love you guys review my work, and I love you all for doing that. And how many of you subscribe? It doesn't cost you a dime. It helps me provide more entertainment value for you. Now, recently, the Baseball Hall of Fame only decided to elect one individual into the Hall of Fame on his first attempt, and that is David Ortiz, Big Pappi of the Boston Red Sox. When the Red Sox were winning quite a few of those World Series, and really kind of, revitalized the Red Sox that time frame. Now, congrats to Ortiz, by the way, for getting selected in there, being the third Dominican selected. He had Pedro Martinez down there with him, down in Dominican Republic. So they shared and embraced because they were both were teammates. About selected to the Hall. And some people kind of question his qualifications to be in there, especially since later on in his career, he was more of a DH than anything else. He wasn't really a position player. He did play occasionally at first base. But the biggest outcry was the fact that Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Sammy Sosa all were left off on their 10th and final attempt to get in using the BBWAA voters, as well as Kurt Schilling, by the way. Now, there's a lot of reasons behind the Sosa, Bonds, and Clemens snubs. It's because of their link to PEDs that all stem from leaked, it came from the ARod investigation where, his supplier was then linked to a bunch of different names in professional, in Major League Baseball, to include, McGuire and Rafael Palmeiro, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Andy Pettit, ARod himself. So there's a lot of reasons why I think they are avoiding that particular group. But then a lot of people are saying, but Ortiz tested positive one time. No, let's just get that out there. One time, 2003, he tested positive. Never tested positive again, unlike Manny Ramirez, who has done twice. So you're telling me because a guy tested positive once, he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall. It's like saying if you failed a test in one of your classes, you don't deserve to pass that class, even though if you do everything else correctly. Same concept there. But I do agree, I don't think Ortiz is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He definitely is a fringe Hall of Famer. He is one of four players who have over 500 home runs and at least 3 World Series titles. The other 3 members are in the Hall. That's Ruth, Mantle, and Jackson. So, you still have that to take into account. He was still a very prolific hitter. Especially with the home runs. I mean, that's what he basically was known for. I mean, he ended his career with 541 home runs, which is no small feat. Batting average, he definitely wasn't best known for getting on base a lot. He's pretty much all or nothing type of hitter. But he's also one of those clutch hitters that pitchers really wanted to avoid to face, especially in those key games, especially the playoffs and key games especially with the Yankees. So you definitely have that, but there's definitely better hitters out there. Todd Helton was a 4-try, didn't get in. He has a 316 average. But then if you look at, those pitchers that also got left off, especially with, Rocket, Kurt Schilling. You look at the strikeouts, Clemens, Schilling, and Pettit are all up there. as well as Peavy, who was another one, and Tim Hudson. All of them have over 2,000 strikeouts. Definitely deserve. Billy Wagner, over 420 saves. Could be another possibility being in there. I mean, there were some, decent players on this list, and I understand the reason why, because everyone thinks Hall of Fame is a museum. Technically, yes. Put a spotlight on those individuals who exemplify the best qualities of baseball in terms of the sport itself on and off the field. And these are supposed to be the true ambassadors of the game that, allow people to come in. And I understand the juice ball area where all these guys were taking, PEDs at the time frame that weren't banned by Major League Baseball, but now are because of how they affected their performance. And I, too, was very into baseball at this time frame, especially when you had the race between McGwire and Sosa. And then, when Bonds made his run, and Roger Clemens was still very, very dominant with his fastballs at such a late age, where a lot of the pitchers' fastballs tail off immensely. He was still hitting 100 miles an hour. Now I know why. So now when I look at hindsight of that, after the whole thing with, ARod and the supply and all that stuff, I do feel that it did taint the image of baseball. These guys used it for a long time, and some of them still deny it. And that's another thing. Barry Bonds denies it. Sammy Sosa denies it. Rafael Palmeiro, Mark McGwire both admitted to it, and they've just disappeared. You don't see anything from them. ARod also admitted it, and you kind of see how his numbers were this past time frame. Kind of right there where Bonds and Clemens have been most of their time frame. And I think the reason why, another reason why Bonds and Schilling has been left off is their stance with the media and their interaction with the fans. I think that kind of mars them a bit. Now, I understand that a lot of people, especially on Twitter, I've seen this threads go through back and forth that, there should be no more writers doing this because the writer's job were saved because of the juice ball area. You also got to think, those writers that are reporting on the game that time frame, not all of them are still writing today. And those that are still writing today, not many of those actually have votes for the Hall. So let's put that into a concept there. Now, I understand that, baseball, after that strike they had, was going through identity crisis. And they needed something to revitalize, bring the money back into the sport, because it was flying pretty high, and then the strike hit, and they lost a lot of momentum. And juice ball helped. Because it brought in a lot of fans, got those big money contracts with, ESPN and Fox and TBS. So they saw what could really be, and then the contracts got up there because, more people were going to the games, and people were excited to watch baseball. But baseball is one of these sports that goes through cycles like this, where it loses national focus to other leagues, and then all of a sudden, a once-in-a-lifetime player comes out of nowhere and just revitalizes interest once again. And then once that fades off, it goes away until the next one shows up. And that's what Major League Baseball does. Much like the NFL. NFL struggled for a bit after their strike, especially when they used the scabs and all that. But now it's the number one, league in the country, right there along with the NBA. That's all you see is NFL, NBA everywhere you look. Baseball's been kind of playing third fiddle now, but it's got to find its place in the middle of the road. It knows during the summer they're the only sport in country that's really playing that anyone really cares about. So they have that going for them, but they got to find something to really entice people to get back into the game. And baseball is really built on tradition. a lot of traditionalists still run the game. That's why the playoffs are so short, season's so long. And they don't really do many rule changes. But that's beside the point. Getting back to the fact of the writers and the voting process, it's done by humans, regardless if it's writers or players, or those that used to play, or somebody, regular fans. It's a human element. The human element will always have a preconceived notion what they consider to be either an all-star or a Hall of Famer or an MVP. They'll have their personal bias turning certain players or certain teams. That's just the nature of a human being. The only way to alleviate that is to go by stats alone and have a computer spit it out. But then you still have a human inputting, either setting up the code or inputting the data. So you always have that human element that comes to vote to the voting. So unfortunately, that's not one thing you'll have in there. It happens with sports, especially all-stars, Hall of Fame, MVPs. It doesn't matter. It's a human element. Now, I know a lot of people also mentioned Pete Rose. Pete Rose, one of the most prolific hitters ever to grace the field for baseball. His major problem is that he bet while he was playing and while he was managing, even on his own team. He bet against his own team. Now, some will kind of frown upon that because you could throw games, but if you look what he did on the field as a player, he's not that type of person. He'll still go out there. Maybe he felt his team would have the right juice to play a certain team at that time frame. It happens. Baseball, you're not going to win every single game. I mean, that's virtually impossible. But because of their stance with gambling back with the Black Sox scandal, and not many people remember that one. The whole Field of Dreams, 8 Man Out, or 8 Men Out. Those two movies right there highlight the aspects of that scandal, where a number of White Sox players colluded with gamblers to throw the 1919 World Series. Part of it was go against Kaminsky and how he was not playing the players that he felt they should get, or give them the opportunity to make certain bonuses, and certain players knew about it, didn't say anything, or were smart enough to realize what was going on. They're easy to coerce, like Shoeless Joe Jackson, who should also be in the Hall. But it's one of these things that baseball takes very, very seriously, where you try to tarnish the image of the sport. Now, with that being said, does that mean that the Hall doesn't say anything about that White Sox team or Pete Rose? No, I'm sure there's things in there. I've never been to Cooperstown, so I can't be 100% sure. I'm sure if you know otherwise, you can let me know down in the comments. But because of the perceived notion of what these players did, and some of them are still denying it, I think Bonds and Clemens will never get in as of right now. Maybe 20 years from now, when they're part of the old man ballot when it comes to baseball, maybe they get in then. Or baseball kind of looks at this, okay, maybe we need to include a juice ball wing in Cooperstown. That being said, at this time, do I think Bonds and Clemens really deserve to be in the Hall? No. As long as they will continue to deny those allegations, because they never got tested positive, because at a time frame they weren't testing for that particular enhancement. But they continue to deny any affiliation with that or whatsoever. they'll probably won't get in until probably about 10 or 20 years from now. Kurt Schilling, I think, regardless of his bravado, especially with the media and his current political views, that really shouldn't play an account. He was definitely a very quality pitcher towards the end of his career. He ended up winning 2 World Series with 2 different teams. And he was the number 2 pitcher in those rotations, and those number 1 guys were in the Hall. I mean, that's the big unit, and Pedro Martinez. I mean, come on, those are 2 prolific pitchers. He was number 2 fiddle to those guys, but yet he's out. Why? He's very rash, very brash, and his views are really extreme and really rub a lot of people the wrong way. That's probably why he has been left out, but I think he should get in before Clemens and Bonds. Sosa, no. Unfortunately with Sosa, his alterations to himself, much like Manny Ramirez, no. If you admit to it, I could say yes, eventually, especially if your stats hold up to that particular scrutiny, like ARods and Pettits, I do believe, do hold up to that. But, you got to take into account the whole human factor. Once you take that out of there, I think that's what's going to really drive that. So I think, who should have got in the Hall besides Ortiz? Todd Helton for sure. He's one of those very prolific hitters, and like I said, 316 average. Then always gone there. On base percentage is 414. So he was very, very good to try to get on the base, to try to, help out his team. And then Billy Wagner had over 400 saves, so he's definitely one of those people that that was clutch right there at the end to shut the door in people's faces. I still say Kurt Trilling should have got in, just because of the fact of how much of a dominant pitcher definitely was towards the end of his career. His ERA was a bit high at 3.46, but with over 200 wins and almost 3,000 strikeouts, I mean, this is definitely one pitcher you didn't want to face. So those guys for sure. I think Cooperstown should have been in the Hall. But I know this is going to spark a lot of controversy because of the fact of who didn't get added to the Hall, and that's really going to affect a lot of people and their perceived notion. And the fact that these guys are what they consider their heroes, and they looked up to them. But it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, especially with the whole asterisk team. What does Altuve get in, or any other big time players from that lineup get into the Hall of Fame? I mean, if we're going to hold the same standard that we hold the Black Sox, Pete Rose, Bonds, Clemens, McGuire, Sosa, you got to hold the same thing to hold the asterisks as well. It's just one of these things. I mean, it's you have to, and that's one thing people got to remember. The Hall of Fame is, yes, it technically is a museum, but it's supposed to represent the best of the sport on and off the field. Not everyone gets in, and that's it. Thing with Hockey Hall of NHL Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame, NBA Hall of Fame. They all have who best represents that particular league, that sport, both on and off, while in uniform and out. How they interacted with the media, how they interacted with the public, how they interact with their communities. And that's one thing you really have to look into that. How did they, interact with their teammates? There's reports out there Barry Bonds was a very, very bad teammate to have on your team. He also, all his antics with the media, he wasn't very good with the media either. So you already have 3 strikes already, with his PED denial, teammate interaction, media interaction. I mean, that's just the nature of the thing. And until you can find a way to completely take out any human element or bias from any human element, the system's going to be flawed. Plain and simple. And it's just the nature of the sport, of any sport. But once again, congratulations, David Ortiz, Big Pappi, for making the Hall of Fame. Definitely got in ahead of a lot of the people. Do I think you deserve to be in the Hall? Yeah. Whereas right now, no. But it's done. Nothing we could do about that. We just pick up, move on. Hoping that Todd Helton, Billy Wagner could get in another time frame. Those are 2 very good players that should really get in. Really thought Trilling should get in, but I understand his bravado outside the pit, the field. It's really kept him out. And then the juice ball era guys, I don't think those guys will get in until either A, they admit to it, and then maybe they'll get a leniency later on in their eligibility, or they have to wait towards another time frame for them to finally to Baseball Hall of Fame to kind of get them in there. But like I said, I understand this is going to cause a lot of feedback and probably get some bad comments with this one. I understand everyone's passionate about this, and I get that. And I try to be as neutral as possible when presenting this idea. And even though I do perceive that the juice ball era guys should not get in, but I do understand the reason for them to be in, because they generated buzz for the sport when it needed it. But I think them being left out is fair. It matches what they've done with other players that have kind of done this particular stance before, especially with gambling. And I was hoping they continue this stance when the Houston players from their World Series victory come up for selection, like Altuve. But just leave a comment, let me know what you think. Please refrain from getting too aggressive on there. Try to keep it as clean as possible. But I know a lot of you guys, I have a lot of your own personal opinions, especially with that. And I look forward for a good discussion about this particular topic. But, make a fair and valid point, and we'll have a good discussion about this. And depending on how those interactions go, depends on whether or not I do a follow-up video for this one. But hey, just let me know down below. You can also subscribe. Once you do that, hit the bell notification until next time I post a video. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.